Hello, everybody. Thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Really helps the channel a lot. Let's go ahead and get into this slate here. Oh, I should mention, I will not be making any videos tomorrow, so to keep that in mind. With that said, let's get into this particular slate. So we have an interesting slate. It starts at 12:30 today, which is unusual, and it's just a six-game slate here, so a smaller slate in general. Pitching is a little bit rough. The top options are good, but there's not much below them. So let's go ahead and get into that part of it. We're going to start with our top overall play in Paul Skeens. Now, he's going to be very popular because of how he started the season with a lot of strikeouts and a lot of potential. His last game was also extremely good against the Cubs. I look for him to, and he's got a very favorable matchup here against San Francisco. So I look for him to be a top tier option. And he's a little bit cheaper than the other options at this position. So that gives him a lot of upside as well. And he's probably got one of the better situations in general on the entire slate. But we're also looking at Gill for the Yankees. Now, he's got a favorable matchup against Seattle. He's been really solid the last four games. He's been good for most of the season. He's got a good ceiling and a pretty safe floor for this one, so I think he's a viable choice. Though I do think Seattle does have a couple of bats that are okay, and so that gives them some potential. But he's definitely a good P1 option as well. And then Wheeler is a very contrarian play today. He's a little bit risky as he's got one of the toughest matchups on the slate. His K rate is not as good as Gills or Skeens right now, so I think he is probably a good play, but he's going to be easy to fade because of his matchup situation. Then we're also going to look at Castillo for Seattle. Now, he's got a tough matchup against the Yankees as well. He's a GPP only play, similar to Wheeler. Uh, but I think he's probably in a worse situation than Wheeler is, so he's a little bit riskier, though his price is cheaper, and he has been really good with the exception of just a couple games so far this season. We do have a couple of guys that are kind of Hail Mary types. Those would be Frankie Montas for Cincinnati. He's got a tough matchup there. Andrew Heaney for Texas has also a tough matchup, but has a little bit of upside. And then Ryan Feltner for Colorado is kind of a Hail Mary play as well, just because Oakland has been struggling recently. But I do like a good GPP, extreme GPP play is Joey Estes. Now, he's only played two games so far this season, and he had a really rough game against Houston, but he had a good game against Seattle. And if he can get 4 or 5 strikeouts against Colorado, he can definitely pay off here. I don't think that he's a great play, but he's dirt cheap at $6,500, so he's a good Hail Mary option on this one. So he's high risk, high reward, obviously. I mean, he is the highest of risks, and so he's definitely somebody to consider as a Hail Mary GPP play or extreme GPP play, but I think he has some viable potential on the slate. Colorado looks absolutely awful on this slate. Let's go ahead and look at this catching position here. Now we really only have two guys that we like at all at this position. It's a rough slate for for catchers. Excuse me. It's a rough slate in general. But Real Muto for Philly is a top overall play. He's been really solid lately. He also had a huge game yesterday when he was looking really good. So I look for him to continue that. This should be a high scoring game here for Philly, and I look for him to be the top option. I also like Shea Langerlace for Oakland. He's the only guy that really jumps off the page at all at this position. I mean, you could definitely just stack up whatever catcher you want with the team that you stack or whatever, but I think that Langerlace is definitely the best option. Though his teammate, actually, if he ends up playing, and McCann also has a little bit of potential today. So catchers are a very rough position, though, in general on the slate. Looking at first base, we'll look at Matt Olson first. Now, he's got a lot of upside in this one. He's really hit the ball better lately, and so he draws really good metrics here. He is a fantastic play at $5,200 as he's not overpriced. Now, Bryce Harper is also a good play, though he is overpriced today, though he's been absolutely phenomenal the last few games, and that gives us a lot of potential today. Philly's going to be a popular stack again, as they were yesterday, and so I look for him to be a top tier option. A couple of value plays at this position. Lamont Wade Jr. for San Francisco. He's a good one-off for San Francisco. He does have a tough matchup with Skeens, but if anybody gets to Skeens, I think he's probably the safest player on the team. And then Cronenworth for let's see, for San Diego looks really good today. He's been pretty solid lately. He's been getting hits most games, and he does draw a lot of good potential on the slate. I'm really leaning towards making him a core play, but Matt Olson is also very good, so I like Olson or Cronenworth as my top options in general there. Looking at second base, we'll start with Ozzy Albies. Now, he has struggled a little bit recently, but he is getting hits, and so as long as he keeps getting hits, he's somebody I'm going to consider here, as he does draw good metrics, and if he get a home run, then he'll definitely be a great option on the slate, but he hasn't really hit any since he's been back from injury very well. Luis Arias, though, for San Diego has absolutely been fantastic lately. He managed to hit a home run, in fact, yesterday, which was even more impressive. So he continues to be a great play for San Diego, and I like San Diego a lot today. And he's one of the reasons why he's my favorite play from the team in general. And so he does fit as a uh, core play for me. But you could also look at Zach Geloff for Oakland at $3,800. He's been up and down, but he definitely has some potential today, and he's been hitting the ball okay the last few games. Nico Horner is in play for Chicago, the Cubs. If you want to stack up the Cubs, Horner is a decent option on the slate as he's got good metrics against Smith Schuster. And then Josh Rojas for Seattle is a very good one-off for the Seattle Mariners, as he has been inconsistent, but he does draw good metrics for this game, as Judson India for Cincinnati. He also does Bay for Pittsburgh is a very interesting play as well, and then Toro for Oakland can also fit in here. Now, I'm gonna say this like this is mostly either use Luis or Reyes or use whatever team's second baseman that you're stacking on the slate, because that's kind of how this. A lot of good second base options today. That's a pretty unusual thing, but I think that it's a good slate for that position. So looking at third base, Alec Boom is the top overall guy, and he's been pretty phenomenal so far this season. He's not a huge home run threat, but he does have good metrics today, so he's definitely worth a look. Manny Machado also in play today, but he has struggled more. However, he's been a little bit boomer bust, but he does draw good metrics for this game, and he definitely is a popular option to me. I think he's a fantastic choice on the slate. But we have several value plays that we could look at here. Chris Morel being one for the Cubs, and he actually does have really good metrics for this one. He does need to hit a home run, as he's been inconsistent outside of hitting home runs. So, but he definitely has that potential today. I also think Josh Rojas, who can play second base, is in play here at third. And then Toro, also, who is at second base, can play at third. And then Candelario for Cincinnati is a good one-off for Cincinnati here at this position. He's been struggling some, but he did manage to home run last game, and he does have good metrics at home, so he's definitely worth a look. Looking at shortstops, Ella De La Cruz is a top tier option. Obviously, yesterday he didn't do anything, and he's been kind of struggling the last few games. He's not gotten many hits. But if he can get on base, he can definitely get stolen bases, and that's pretty much why you want to utilize him, because he can get 2 or 3 stolen bases in one go. So obviously he's extremely expensive and hard to roster as a result. O'Neal Cruz, though, looks absolutely fantastic today. He is going to be a core for me right now. And as long as if you can't afford to pay up for Ella De La Cruz, this sticking or sorry, yeah, Ella De La Cruz in there, sticking O'Neal Cruz for Pittsburgh instead, as he's nice and cheap and has a great opportunity here. Nico Horner can also play here at shortstop, and then J.P. Crawford is kind of a one-off uh, for Seattle as a one-off this dirt cheap to help you pay up at other positions. Moving to outfielders, outfield is actually a really good position today, but our top guys are Acuna, Judge, and Soto. They all have a lot of upside, and yesterday Soto and Judge just went crazy, and I look for them to be really solid plays again. They've been hitting the ball very well this season. Acuna has struggled more than those guys, but he does have good metrics and stolen base potential and home run upside, so uh, he definitely is worth a look, though he is very expensive for that situation. Hurton Boys for Cincinnati is my first value play at this position. Now, he has not done much to start so far, but he did manage to get some fantasy points yesterday, which is nice. I look for him to be still just dirt cheap, so that gives him a lot of potential as a starter. So if he starts, then he's definitely worth a look. He's only struck out once in all the games he's played so far, so he definitely has the ability to hit the ball. He's just had some bad luck from that perspective. Bellinger looks fantastic today for the Cubs. He is expensive though, but if you can afford him, then he's definitely somebody I would consider trying to roster today. I also like Michael Harris. Uh, see Harris for Atlanta. He's had some ups and downs throughout the season, and he's been somewhat situation dependent. But right now, he looks really good today, so he's definitely worth a look. Brian Reynolds for Pittsburgh is in this really nice spot. He's priced very fairly. He's hitting the ball pretty well, and so that gives him a lot of potential today. Benson has a lot of upside on the slate, especially being at home. He's been up and down though. He's actually played better away, but this game he has really good metrics, and he's not overpriced, so he's definitely worth a look. Suzuki is in play for Chicago Cubs, Rooker for Oakland, Hop for the Cubs, Sawinski for Pittsburgh, Castellanos for Philly, Yaz for San Francisco, Verdugo for the Yankees, Tachman for the Cubs, and Profar for San Diego. They all carry good upside on the slate. There's a lot. Outfield is very deep today. Uh, Overall, this slate is kind of weird because we have a couple positions like catcher, shortstop, even third base and first base that have kind of limited options. But then second base and outfield just look like it's deep as you could ever have. As that's going to make fantasy pretty interesting today. So when it comes to sub 3,000 plays, we have four guys to look at. Hurta Boys, who obviously already talked about, he does draw good potential today. Can zone, let's see, can from Seattle. Also interesting at $2,900 for Seattle. Kalinick, if he draws a start today for Atlanta, then he'll be somebody to consider. And then Seth Brown for Oakland, also nice and cheap today. So all four of those guys are actually in the outfield. There's nobody else. This slate is kind of rough from that perspective. So let's go ahead and get into our stacks here because I think we have some fantastic stacks on the slate. Looking at these stacks, Philadelphia slate stack with Boom, Harper, Real Muto, Castellanos, and either Sosa or Stott looks absolutely fantastic today. I actually like the San Diego one even better, though, with Reyes, Cronenworth, and then either Machado, Profar, Merrill, Peralta, or Tatis Jr. I'm probably looking at this three middle and Profar, Merrill, and Peralta, but maybe Machado, Profar, Merrill, because that stack just looks really good. And I think Tatis Jr. is fadeable today in general. I also like the Cincinnati stack with De La Cruz, though he's super expensive. But Herta Boys actually helps alleviate some of that price. And then Benson, India, and then either Ford, Steer, or Martini, depending on who you like better there, and based on pricing as well. For Atlanta, it's super expensive, but Acuna, Olson, Harris, Ozuna, and then either Kalinick or Albies. I think Albies is the guy that you could fade here at this position. For Pittsburgh, Cruz, Reynolds, Sawinski, McCutcheon, and Joe. I think Pittsburgh is a good stack, but really I just like the top three the most. For the Cubs, Bellinger, Morel, Horner, Suzuki, and then either one of the top, Tachman or Bush. The the Cubs stack actually looks really good, and there's a lot of different ways you could build it. So, but I definitely think that those are the best options for the Yankees: Soto, Judge, Verdugo, Rizzo, and then either Stanton or I meant Stanton or I don't even know who I meant there. Sorry about that. Well, that's really what it is. Soto, Judge, Verdugo, Rizzo, and Stanton. And then for Oakland, G-Loff, Rooker, Wangerlays, or McCann, and then Belliday or Toro, and then Brown or Sherman. I think this Oakland stack is actually somewhat good today. I think they all look really solid on the slate. It's going to be a tough game there between Oakland and Colorado, but I think Oakland has a lot of favorability. For San Francisco, Wade Jr., Yaz, Estrada, Soler, and Chapman. Pretty rough slate for them. I don't love that stack, but I think it's a viable. For Seattle, Rojas, Crawford, Canzone, Rayleigh, and then more France. The lefties do get a boost. I don't really like any of the righties, but I do think these front four have some upside. And then for Colorado, McMahon, Doyle, K, Blackman, and Tovart, man, they all look terrible other than McMahon. And then Texas, Seager, Garcia, Carter, Lowe, or Taveras is extremely expensive, and it's not really a great situation for the team in general, even though they have a lot of potential. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day.